Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortnaster, and welcome back to another Gaming University reaction and another Psychology of Psychonauts. This one's going to be about Waterloo World. So yeah, it's been a little while since I last did a reaction to one of the Psychology of Psychonauts videos. And again, I'm sorry, Deltarune was really taking off with, Deltarune's Chapter 3 and 4 finally being announced and released after 7 years. But now that that's happened, I'm allowing myself to catch up on some of the other stuff that I've been wanting to watch that wasn't Deltarune related. And here we are. Now, Waterloo World, oh god, what was his first name? I forget. I remember he had, he thought he was possessed or, had, the mind or the ghost of, Napoleon Bonaparte in his head. It was, oh god, what was his name? It was Neil or something? I forget. It'll probably be said in the video. But honestly, thinking back, Waterloo World was probably one of my favorite, was like my second favorite level in Psychonauts 1 after the Milkman conspiracy. Just because of how I liked the gimmick of the level, where it was like, oh, you're playing on this giant board game. You have to find out ways to move the pieces around and stuff like that. So, I mean, honestly, I really don't have anything else to say on the topic. I mean, again, with a lot of these videos, of course, they go into actual, detail on, stuff that I probably just overlooked or didn't really notice in the first place, and also just all the, the behind-the-scenes stuff that really didn't make it into the main game. Again, it's just so good actually learning this stuff, and not only, learning, how stuff, actually was presented in the level, but how it actually relates to actual psychology, because that's one of the things I really have loved about the Psychonauts series as I've played it. Because I remember after I played Psychonauts 2, I discovered a playthrough that a psychologist, an actual trained psychologist, did of Psychonauts 2, and I just loved watching his streams, and then he'd stop and actually talk about the stuff actually being talked about and shown in the levels. I just loved that perspective of, how you could actually get something real and actually, turn it into, gameplay, basically. But yeah, that's one of those things I've been really liking this series for, and I want to continue it, because, again, he's not stopping making them. They haven't reached the end of Psychonauts 2 yet. I mean, they're almost there. They released the ones known as Quilts, which I'm trying to remember how many more levels there are after that one, but, we're gonna have to get to it eventually. So yeah, with all that out of the way, you should probably get this thing started. So yeah, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video will lead to my Let's Play of the day. And yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
With Gloria and Boyd behind us, we see a trend of broken homes and traumatic events being the root of their problems. This is not always the case, as seen with the next patient, Fred Bonaparte.
Fred, that was his name, okay.
Once the chief orderly of the asylum, it was Fred's duty to care for the patients. Seemingly, he showed no outward signs of being mentally unhealthy. Even he did not see himself as having problems whatsoever. With Boyd and Gloria, it was obvious, so figuring out Mr. Bonaparte will take a bit more work. Without knowing what to look for, it is hard to recognize there is an issue to begin with. Behavior that would otherwise seem healthy can be the result of a long-term conditioned response. For Fred, this behavior mixed with an external stressor is what triggered his mental illness.
Yeah, thinking back, didn't he snap because he kept losing the board game? He kept losing the board game to the guy that became Dr. Lobato's assistant. I'm completely forgetting what his name is now. But, the guy with poor eyesight that we just wore a painting on Rise's face to get past.
In order to get more details on this, let's back up and take a look at his story. Over the course of his duties as chief orderly, Fred took interest in a catatonic patient named Crispin Whitehead.
Crispin, that was his name.
Inviting him to play a game of Waterloo, Fred hoped that this form of play therapy would help Crispin open up. One of the mental vaults shows what happens next. In Fred vs. Crispin, we see that the patient was an adept player and easily won repeatedly. In the next vault, Fred vs. Napoleon, the chief orderly walked away from the game after losing 27 times in a row. Between the association with the game Waterloo and Fred being a blood descendant of Napoleon Bonaparte, the genetic memory of his ancestor woke up angry with his descendant for being bested. While this scene can be described as Fred being possessed by the spirit of Napoleon, it is more accurate to say a split personality was triggered. Better known as dissociative identity disorder, or DID, the real-world cause is not fully understood. According to research performed at the Cleveland Clinic, long-term abuse was a factor in 90% of documented cases.
Really? Well, I mean, okay, again, from the little bit I do know that there's a whole lot of compartmentalization. So the idea that you kind of like, push the trauma to one side, and eventually you have so much of it pushed off to one side that it basically becomes its own person, quote unquote. Yeah, so with that, if that could really be the case, I mean, how was Fred's home life then? Because, like, maybe it was quite literally, like, depending on who was his parent. Well, I mean, given that, his last name was Bonaparte, it was most likely his father. So, I mean, maybe, maybe the father was very, very proud of his heritage and stuff like that, and kind of like, beat into him. It's like, oh, you're Bonaparte. It's like, you don't fail. And, kind of ignoring the fact that, Napoleon eventually did fail or something like that. Or maybe you could also put it as like, oh, Napoleons don't give up, because, Napoleon actually did try it, like, he came back, he actually did come back once. He was very, it took a lot of times to actually put him down.
The running theory is that an individual may mentally break away from the self as a method of avoiding physical or mental distress. Other proposed causes can be linked to traumatic events such as accidents, natural disasters, war, and things of that nature. The brain, in its attempt to self-regulate, uses this as a method of coping. The seeds of DID are generally planted during childhood when the brain is still developing. The theory is that the brain learns this dissociative technique to avoid stressors. Once something works, the brain keeps doing it as a learned behavior. However, this basic
I mean, it's like, how does it go? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Though in this case, it was already broke, you just didn't know it.
Description doesn't fully apply here. The Napoleon personality isn't crafted to avoid something. If anything, Fred is the one running away after losing the game. The general is demanding that Fred's warrior spirit be reinvigorated and return to defeat Crispin. This is not the only difference, though. Generally, the individual is unaware of the other personalities, while these two have full conversations. These conversations are visualized within Fred's mental world. Once inside, the two can be found facing off around a game board. The Battle of Waterloo is designed on 3 tiers. A room with the 2 players, the game board itself where Raz can position the pieces, and zooming down into a game world modeled after the French Revolution. The drama of the level is centered around a game of war between the two. Each time Napoleon makes a move, Fred immediately gives up and forfeits.
Oh man, now look! The bridge is broken and I can't move my pieces past it anymore. I quit. Napoleon, you win.
No, we don't forfeit. We're gonna beat you, Mr. Genetic Memory of Napoleon Bonaparte.
Raz's objective is to help Fred win the game. In order to do so, game pieces like carpenters, soldiers, and knights must be recruited to the effort. By winning the game, the Napoleon personality is banished. While the concept seems fairly simple, we must ask ourselves why winning the game cured him of a dissociative disorder. By following how he changed as a person throughout the course of the game, we can get an idea. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that Fred had developed a learned behavior. Everyone develops unique behavioral structures as we develop. Some can be beneficial, some detrimental. Even the negative traits, for the most part, do not significantly affect our day-to-day lives. Sometimes, though, they can hold you back and prevent you from reaching your full potential. The trouble is, most people don't wonder if their thought patterns properly serve them. After all, we think the way we think, and it is all we have ever known.
Oh god, that's just the thing, isn't it? Like, I've heard, a lot of, things about, the brain, that a lot of the times you're blind to your own, like, faults and stuff like that. In fact, I mean, I remember hearing kind of a joke It's like, where he went like, oh, the brain is the most important organ in the body, said the brain, you know, that something like that. And when you get down to it, like, after all, with all this, like, it's just, you know, broken mirrors upon broken mirrors, because, like, oh yeah, you don't know if your behaviors are, you know, bad or dysfunctional, stuff like that. But then on top of that, you also have other people who have their own, you know, like their own slightly broken like mirrors or whatever, where like their thought patterns might not be the best, but then they try to help you, and it's just like a self-repeating loop there. God, that's depressing to think about.
It is odd to contemplate, but have you ever asked yourself, why do I think the way I do? Fred
Asperger's, probably. Yeah.
While it is apparent that losing the board game to Crispin created an inferiority complex in him, there is more to the story. Why did he take it so hard? After all, his duty was to get the patient out of a catatonic state. He succeeded. He should feel accomplished. Instead, he felt helpless at his inability to win a simple game with a man he considered a feeble-minded invalid. Based upon the evidence in the game, Fred has a behavior called learned helplessness. In the 1960s...
You know, I think about it, I guess that does kind of make sense. But I mean, like, at that point, like, you really have to wonder, like, as I said, like, he lost the game 27 times in a row. And if I know anything about, you know, the cartoon logic of, you know, the Psychonauts world, that was probably one after another after another. They probably spent like a good day and a half playing the game just over and over and over and over again. So at that point, if I did that too, like if I was playing, like, say, like either Waterloo or any other board game with somebody else, like Monopoly or anything like that, and I played 27 consecutive games and lost every single one of them against the same person, at that point, I would have to, I'm pretty sure I would start breaking around the edges too, because at that point, like, I mean, I guess the learned helplessness also kind of goes into that, but that almost seems like an insurmountable task where, like, no matter what strategy I do, or no matter, like, what I try, it's like I keep failing. It just keeps happening and happening and happening. Ugh. Oh, that's horrible.
Out of the University of Pennsylvania, the psychologist Martin Seligman began research on the behavior and how it related to depression. Learned helplessness is a behavioral pattern where one has grown so accustomed to a negative stimuli that they begin to feel they have no control in preventing it. As a result, when they have the power to do something about it, they don't. During Seligman's research, he was able to produce this behavior in dogs. They were divided into 3 groups. Group 1 was put in a harness for some time and released. Okay. Group 2 involved placing the dogs in a harness and giving them an electric shock. A lever in the area, once pressed, would turn off the shock. As a result, they learned to exhibit control over the negative stimuli. Group 3 was also given the shock but had no way to turn it off. However, when the dog in Group 2 hit the lever, the shock stopped for Group 3 as well. From the dogs in Group 3's perspective, the pain was random and felt inescapable. They had no control over when it started and when it stopped. Phase 2 of the experiment involved putting all dogs into a shuttle box with a partition between each section. On one side was a plate that would send an electric shock, on the other was a plate that did nothing. All they had to do was jump over the small wall to get away from the negative stimuli.
Oh wait,
the
no,
animals
I think
in
I've heard
Group
of
1
this.
and 2 did this without thinking. However, since Group 3 learned they had no control over their situation, they simply laid down and did nothing to get away from the pain. They learned to live with a bad situation, since in their heads, they had no way to stop it, so why even try? This same dynamic can be seen in human behavior. If one continuously fails at a math test, or quitting a bad habit, or trying to lose weight, the question comes up, why do I even try? Nothing I do helps, so the effort is pointless.
Okay, so in that case, like, it's... In that case, Napoleon, in this instance, isn't so much, you know, all the negative thoughts. It's very much, seemingly, maybe Fred's, like, maybe in this case, Napoleon is the positive aspects of Fred's mind, fighting, like, telling him, oh, no, you have to keep fighting, you have to try. Well, Fred's just kind of like, sitting there, like, why does it matter? It's like, if nothing's gonna work.
This is learned helplessness. Characteristics of this behavior include low self-esteem, lack of motivation, low expectations of success, believing that lack of success is because of personal shortcomings, and believing that succeeding is dictated by factors outside of your control, such as luck. The implication in Psychonauts is that throughout his life, Fred Bonaparte was unable to succeed in anything. He relates a story where he took place in a Pinewood Derby.
I did have this really valuable collector's coin. Passed down through generations from my father's father. Whatever. I haven't really seen it since I tried to melt it down. You what? I needed more weight in my Pinewood Derby racer. Not that it would have helped, the way I lost. Big surprise there.
When an individual spends so much time failing over and over, they may stop trying altogether. Better to not try at all than suffer the humiliation and pain of losing. For most of us, we don't realize this behavioral pattern is influencing our actions. Since it doesn't overtly harm us, the pattern goes unnoticed. However, when Fred began to lose over and over to a man he considered to be mentally inferior, his conditioned response of helplessness surged back until he couldn't take it anymore. This is when he went into the bathroom and witnessed his ancestor, the famed war general, leap through the mirror, disgusted with his descendants' acceptance of failure. After this, Fred is placed in a straitjacket, a symbol of his inability to assert any form of authority in his own life. Only after winning the game does he take the coat restricting his actions off.
Jeez, I was actually thinking about that. Because, like, well, granted, I mean, like, I know, at least I hope, that, you know, most modern, like, mental asylums are a lot better than they used to be. But you have to wonder, and I've also heard a lot of, you know, I've heard several, you know, horror stories where as experiments they've sent people into insane asylums as like to see what they're like, and they've actually, like, completely normal people that when they came out, they actually came out with like mental illnesses. So I really have to wonder, like, I'd want to look up the research and see, like, how often was it a thing where you might have, you know, say like an employee of a mental institution actually be committed to the mental institution itself. Like, again, as I said, if I lost 27 times in a row to a guy who was seemingly like a vegetable before, that would start doing something to my head. I'm certain of it. So being around, well, I mean, depending on how bad the person is, just being around that amount of crazy all the time, like, how does that start to affect you?
Let's move back to his dissociative issues for a moment. Many are familiar with multiple personality disorder and may consider it synonymous with DID. However, this term is not widely used, as those suffering from DID do not technically have multiple personalities. They have multiple fragmented personalities. All are parts of the individual that are broken into different partitions, like a computer hard drive. While they may take on different personalities, voices, and expressed history, they are only pieces of the complete person. With this in mind, the Napoleon Bonaparte we see is not a spirit possessing the chief orderly. He is the desire to succeed that Fred repressed into the shadows.
Yeah, what I said earlier.
He told himself his entire life that the world acted upon him and he had no power to act upon the world, his urge to be victorious never left him. We see the dichotomy of the two inside the mental world. Both sit opposite of one another, like looking into a mirror, reflections of Fred's conscious personality and a repressed personality pushed into the shadow. Fred always gives up, forfeiting the game without putting any real effort in.
Look, I forfeit, okay? You win. Napoleon Bonaparte wins again.
Napoleon, on the other hand, will do anything and everything in order to win. Rasputin's goal here is not to win the game for Fred, but to remind him that he wants to win. Let us circle back to the Seligman experiments again. Now that learned helplessness was induced, they set out to find a cure for it. Quickly, it was learned that bribing the dog with treats or threatening them did nothing to help. Instead, the experimenters picked up the dogs and manipulated their legs, mimicking the physical action needed to hop over the wall and escape from the shock. After doing this multiple times, the dog would begin escaping of their own free will. In essence, they needed to be physically taught how to move themselves again until they learned they did in fact have the power to escape the negative stimuli.
Physically manipulated. You know, oddly enough, when I think about that, like, like, is it just me, or does that seem like just a little too simple? Like I don't know what that says about me, but like something like in my head that just seems like, oh hey, that just seems like too simple of a way to fix that problem. But I mean, at the same time, Occam's razor is a thing, so who knows?
This is exactly what Raz does throughout the Battle of Waterloo. While it may seem like Fred is a passive observer to the game with Napoleon, Rasputin is taking him step by step through the psychological process. This is in more ways than one. Moving the pieces is only one step. Recruiting the pieces is another. Between the carpenter, the 3 soldiers, and the knight all reflect Fred's refusal to do anything to help in the war. Raz must motivate them, make them want to fight. One soldier wants reassurance that Fred cares about him. One wants money. Another wants a weapon. Going through these motions is reminding Fred of his warrior instinct, similar to what the experimenters did with the dog. Throughout the game, we see it working. The closer to victory, the more animated Fred gets.
Ha! We'll see about that. Fred? Was that you? Yeah, come on, we're winning. All we have to do is unjam those gears. I'm on it, General.
You can hear the excitement in his voice at the prospect of winning. By placing the knight into the castle, the mental ritual is complete. With the game over, Raz exits the mind and finds Fred cured but exhausted. Napoleon was an unincorporated aspect of his personality, and this experience allowed him to integrate it, merging the two back into one. From here on forward, Fred Bonaparte has his warrior spirit along with his normal conscious personality. The Battle of Waterloo is a lesson about the lies we tell ourselves. While it is true that the world acts upon us and it feels like we have no agency, we still have the power to inflict our will upon the world as well. Reminding ourselves of this is the first step in pivoting to a better direction. As random as it may sound, I will leave this video off talking about the psychological relevance of the baby rattle. While the baby toy trends come and go, the rattle has been around a long time. Archaeologists have uncovered rattles made of clay going back to the 5th century BC.
Really? Oh, okay.
Why has this stuck around so long? A newborn is fully dependent upon his or her parents for everything. In essence, the world acts upon them and they have no power over themselves. Some developmental psychologists have asserted that the rattle is a tool for cognitive development.
Oh, okay. As a way of teaching them literally that they can do something, even if it's just like even if it's just a little like subconscious thing, that they can do things to affect the world. Even if it's literally just shaking this little stick toy thing and it making a noise. I had no idea rattles went that far back. Like, I mean, I guess for the most part, I'd always thought of them as, you know, a relatively modern sort of deal. But I mean, looking at that one in the back, that one looks like it's like either like upper class or like royalty, you know, seemingly made out of silver and whatever the white part is. I can't tell whether it's like ivory or something like that. But the fact that you have versions of it going back thousands of years, literal thousands, that is fascinating. Jeez, amazing. God, I guess that really does just go to show. I mean, like, this is part of the reason I hate, you know, it's just kind of going off topic, why I hate, you know, talk of, like, ancient aliens and stuff like that. Because, like, generally, you know, I guess also just as regular culture, like, we tend to assume that ancient people were stupid. Even though they built these giant things. You have these people that just assume, oh, these ancient people they were physically impossible for them to do something like this. They had to have gotten outside help. But something like this, something as simple as a rattle, to help, you know, just subconsciously teach a child that they can affect the world, and the fact that that concept has stayed around in one form or another for literally thousands of years. God, honestly, that is just fascinating. It really is.
Just like the dog had to be pushed to step over the wall and Fred had his hand moved to win the game, the parent places the toy in their hand and shakes it, making the rattling sound. With this act, the child learns cause and effect. I do this, and a sound happens. They learn that they do in fact have the power to act upon the world around them. By letting the obstacles placed upon the path dissuade us from walking the road, we remain in the same place, never progressing and feeling more helpless day by day. Sometimes all we need is a tool, a mental rattle to remind ourselves that we have the strength to overcome those obstacles and continue forward. Just like any journey, we may not end up where we intended, but if we keep walking and endure the struggles instead of running from them, we will end up somewhere better than where we started.
Again, what was I saying before at the beginning of this video, like why I liked watching this stuff? Like, just, like, like thinking about it. I think, like, I had heard of, you know, the concept of learned helplessness before. Where, I don't know, it's probably just one of those things I heard in another video off of YouTube, you know, somewhere. But the idea, but just like the idea that, you know, this learned helplessness, and that Fred's mind was fighting against this in the form of Napoleon. I mean, like, again, like, this is stuff that, like, I never thought about when I was originally playing the game. Like, I never thought, oh, I just assumed, oh, it's a regular split personality, and well, once we beat it, Napoleon just disappeared. I had never even thought of the fact that, again, like, Napoleon didn't come out of nowhere. He came as, like, basically, as a defense mechanism. Ah, love it. Yeah, but that's definitely going to be it for now. So, yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, yeah, that's definitely going to be it for now. So, yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.